Hey guys, this is John, and I'm playing nurmi in the 5 minute pool on ICC. Been a while since I've said that. I haven't played the 5 minute pool for a little while, but let's give it a shot and play a game against Mr. Nurmi, who I have played before. I'm going to play knight f3. This is a move I've often employed against the Queen's Gambit accepted. In my chessable repertoire, I actually recommend e3 instead of knight f3. Now, this a6 move, I'm trying to remember what to do against this. I think I'm going to play e3, and after b5, probably play a4 and try to undermine his queen side. But he might look to hang on to this pawn. And here, yeah, I have to figure out, do I want to play knight c3, for instance? I think I will. Just attacking this pawn again. If he pushes it, b4, then I'll play knight a2, and he'll have two undefended pawns. So I hope I can get one of them back. So last I left off, my rating was 2468. Hopefully we can keep that going. That's a decent rating. So c6, so he locks in this bishop, but he does hold the pawn. I feel I need to play this position in Gambit style, like b3, for instance. Is that an overreaction yet? b3, b4, knight e4, c3, knight c5, something along those lines. That actually looks like a lot of pressure. I'm going to play this and risk him playing b4, because I think knight e4 and trying to get into c5 could be good. I think he's likely to take on b3, whereupon I'll take with the queen. Maybe I can play a quick knight e5 and threaten queen takes f7 mate. Of course, he's not going to allow that. Also, there are some threats on b5. Yeah, he plays a sensible move here. So if I take, nothing doing there. Probably just bishop e2. Yeah, let's play bishop e2 and get castled for the time being. He is going to be tied up for the next few moves. And hopefully we can use that to our advantage. Often in this structure, you do try to play it positionally, and even though white is down a pawn, it's not so easy for black to make use of the 3-1 majority on this wing. That said, I probably got to look into a6 on move 3 further. I don't recall having faced that move before. Let's see what he does. Yeah, just bishop e7. I kind of want to play bishop a3 and look to get control over c5. Maybe knight e5 directly is also good. Knight e5, knight d7, though, is the thing. If I could quickly play knight e5, bishop f3, I would. But it may just not be realistic. Again, I'm looking at taking for a brief moment. Not seeing much gained from that. Okay, let's go with bishop a3. Trying to conquer some of those queenside dark squares. He castles. Let's just play a useful looking move, rook f c1. Line up against that pawn on c6. Just plays knight bd7, yep. Okay, so we got to make something out of this now. Maybe knight e5. Knight e5 is consistent, isn't it? Knight e5, take, knight d5, take e7, followed by knight e4. Getting into some important squares. Yeah, let's try it. I don't want to sit back and just let him consolidate his position. You know, my pieces are nice, but I am down a pawn after all. I have to get some play for it. Happy hump day to everyone out there. It is Wednesday, or possibly Thursday if you're watching this. I've been busy thus far this week. Hence, I've been trying to make more videos on the weekends when I have time. Okay, so he just responds rook c8. So bishop f3 or something else. f4 comes to mind, but I don't know if I'm really thrilled about taking with the f-pawn. Probably bishop f3 has to be played. Opposing this bishop on b7. I sense he's a little hesitant to take my knight because he knows that I'm going to take with the d-pawn and possibly obtain an outpost on d6. So knight to b6. I wonder if there's tactics on b5 now. So if I take, he has to take with the a-pawn, and then knight takes b5. That should win back the pawn, right? Unless there's some complication. I think this will work. I don't want to throw in bishop takes e7, because then after queen takes, he defends his bishop. That's going to ruin my combination. So if a takes b5, I must play knight takes b5. Seems to win the pawn back. If he plays bishop takes a3 here, I will take with the queen, most likely. Queen takes a3, and then if a takes b5, knight takes b5. And again, I think I'm holding on to the pawn. Okay, so he does do that. Now this move. Loose piece on b7. Undefended bishop. Okay, so knight d5. Right back to c3. Now he is threatening to take the knight. I also have knight a7. Knight a7 is looking good. Hitting the rook, hitting c6. That must be correct. Sometimes you just look at a move and you figure it has to be the right move. So yes, let's do this. He can take on a3 if he wants. I could take c8 then, or just recapture rook takes a3. So bishop takes a3, rook takes a3, rook c7, knight takes c6, queen c8. I have knight e7 check, winning his queen, I think. Yeah, that doesn't look good for him. So if I could win this pawn, that would be excellent. Okay, so if I take c8, he takes c1, I take b6. What's happening there? It's hard to calculate that, but I think taking with the rook is better. Let's do that. I mean, I maintain the attack on c8 and also c6, so I don't see what's wrong with it. Yeah, he's just going to pitch the pawn, it appears. If I take d5, he's taking with one of the pawns. So let's take here first. Get our knight out of dodge. I got to watch the time a little bit. Okay, which way to recapture? Rook takes or knight takes? Knight takes feels more normal, so I think I'm going to play that. I wonder if he'll go queen c7. Not queen d6, okay. So let's take a3, or take a8 rather. Taking on d5 doesn't quite work. g3 maybe. Yeah, g3 looks pretty good. I wonder if rook c8 is an issue that I maybe should have considered. I do have queen b5 then, but this knight is kind of pinned. But I want g3 just to get rid of any back rank issues. If rook a3, probably queen b2. Okay, but now we got to move a little faster. So let's do that. Rook a3, queen b5 now. Idea queen e8. I also have in mind rook c6 here. Attacking the queen, attacking the knight. My old nemesis in Blitz games, time pressure, right? Okay, so if queen e8 comes, that would be nice. As I said, I also have rook c6 on the agenda. I don't fear any sort of knight takes e3 business. That's not going to work for black, especially with queen e8. So clearly possible. Let's just take and go here. Because these knights are tangled. If one of the knight goes to d5, I just have e4, don't I? Yeah, how does he get out of this mess? If rook a4, there's bishop d1. So I don't see how he's going to avoid losing material now. So e4. This bishop is defended by my knight. So he found a clever way to negotiate that. But ultimately, he should still be down material. 2 pawns, right? This pawn's a little far away from home, but yeah, I should be able to hold on and win this. Kind of has to take now. If he doesn't, this is not going to end well for him, I don't think. Let's just force him to take. Yeah, now we can play f5. This is going to be winning because we're going to get our king in. Actually, we can just go directly here and win the h-pawn. We'll just go let him win the h-pawn, and then queen r-pawn. All right, so we were able to nurse that pawn advantage down the stretch. However, I think shortly after the opening, my compensation for the pawn was nebulous. I do not believe with best play that I should have full compensation. That makes me think that my opening play was not so great and leaves something to be desired. I think you can play these positions like this, b3, c takes b3, queen takes b3, but in the absence of concrete threats, I do believe in my bones that black should come out somewhat on top here. He happened to blunder into a tactic, but let's say right around here, I think if black finds some normal way to proceed, battening down the hatches, he should be fine. So let's go back and have a look at this. So Queen's Gambit accepted. As I said on chessable.com, I recommend e3. A little plug for the repertoire I put up there. The d4 repertoire for white, because this is the clearest way to win the pawn back. Knight f3, on the other hand, does have some advantages. One is that you rule out e5, which is a move that after e3 you must take into consideration. Black can try to do this, even though it loses the pawn on e5. Black can swap, and I think this position is pretty reasonable for black, in fact. So knight f3 is a move I've often played here. And it's worth pointing out that many people play e4 as well, just taking over the center. This is the most ambitious move. So after knight f3, he played a6, and you could compare this to like a Slav defense, where in preparation for b5, white might feel compelled to play a4 so as to prevent that idea from black. So I wonder if that's just the best course of action here. I was trying to avoid playing this move because in my experience, this a4 move is weakening, and you'd rather not play it. But under the circumstances, I feel like I should do it. Let's just see what the engine thinks. Gives my move e3, and then after b5, now playing a4. So I played a4 as a reaction to him already having played b5, but you can play it prophylactically to stop your opponent from playing a5. It's debatable. I gotta look in the database and see, but I mean, this seemed to proceed normally. And here b3 immediately is the best move according to the computer. What about this line that it's now giving? A takes b5, a takes b5, rook takes a8, bishop takes a8, and now b3. And then if take... is this possible? Oh, I don't know why I overlooked this idea. Yeah, because if you can play b3 and after c takes b3, not play queen takes b3 yet, but instead play bishop takes b5 check and go win the b3 pawn later, then that makes a great deal of sense. I don't know why I didn't consider this. So when I play that undermining move a4, the complement to it is b3. So maybe I should just proceed down this straightforward path. A couple exchanges and then b3. Black's not going to be able to hold the pawn on c4. I mean, something like bishop d5 is out of the question after this. The pawn is too unstable. Knight c3 even, threatening the bishop, threatening e4. Queen a4 maybe. Check, forking the king and the pawn if necessary. That's the way forward, it seems. Instead, I play knight c3. He plays c6. So he's buried this piece, but he's setting up a barricade of pawns here on the queen side. And I played b3, so trading off one of the doubled c pawns, but I need some way to get forward or make some forward progress on the queen side. And with a takes b5 now amounting to next to nothing after, I think, either capture, really. The engine likes a takes b5, but I could imagine this is also tempting, opening the bishop. I wanted to go b3 and try to get my queen out, open some lines. One line I was contemplating was b4 here, knight e4, and then c3, if black tries to entrench this protected passed pawn deep in my camp. But I had a feeling he might not do that because of the possibility of knight c5. I also thought maybe I could play a5 and stop him from playing a5 and defending this pawn. Maybe, let's just say hypothetically, I don't know if bishop c8 is the best move, but say I play a5 here. If I could go attack b4, win that pawn, eventually c3 will drop as well. This is still unclear according to the computer, even though black has no pieces developed, and we're already on move 10. So take, I took with the queen. Yeah, the computer wants to play bishop a3 right away. That might be more flexible, because if e6, then we can trade on f8, and black will not be able to castle. at least the conventional way. Yeah, I suppose it makes sense because I can play queen takes b3 whenever I want. But I did it directly. And then e6, bishop e2. Yeah, these next moves are me just developing. Already he has a sizable advantage. According to Stockfish, b4 is good here. Yeah, I don't have knight e4 anymore. Technically, he's not threatening b takes c3 because he would lose his bishop on b7. But that's a clear edge right there. It's hard for me to bring my bishop out now. I can't put it here or here. Well, maybe I could, but I wouldn't want to put it on, d2 or b2 when he can take and then take again. Continuation like that. In this case, he'd be hitting the rook. So probably a good moment for him to play b4, yeah, and maybe follow with a5. So instead I played bishop a3, which has the benefit of stopping him from playing b4. Rook fc1, knight bd7, and here I played knight e5. So this knight turned out to be a nuisance. I wonder what happens if he just trades some stuff. Let's follow the engine line. Bishop takes a3, queen takes a3, knight takes e5, d takes e5, knight d5. So my big idea is that I want to play knight e4 and try to focus on some of these squares that my knight can land on, c5 or d6. It's some compensation, but again, not full. b4, queen b2 or b3, a5 supporting the pawn. Yeah, I mean, optically this position looks nice for white, but those two extra pawns on the queen side do mean something. I'm only down one pawn, but now it looks like two because my e-pawns are somewhat discounted, being doubled. So instead he played rook to c8, tolerating my knight on e5 for the time being. And again, he should probably get rid of it. He tried to play around this piece, but knight b6, quite clearly a mistake. Following the engine's advice once again, trade followed by knight d7, a takes b5, a takes b5, and if ever I do this, he can take on e5 is the difference. So maybe even like this, I don't know. The computer seems to think that this is more promising, and maybe taking on e5 thereafter. So he should get rid of that knight in the center, I think is what we're seeing here. Instead, he plays knight b6, now I take, and it's very unfortunate for black that he cannot take with the c-pawn since he loses the bishop. So he did this, I took with the knight. Had he played bishop takes a3, I was just planning on queen takes a3, I think it was. And I thought I could do the same thing. Looks like it. Interestingly, there's also this move, which maybe I would have considered, but didn't cross my mind at the time. B takes a6, in between move, saying go ahead and take here because I'm going to take this guy. And then I suppose if rook b8, knight takes c6 is looking nasty. Lots of hanging black pieces and attacked pieces. So now knight takes, and the eval shot up for white because not only have I regained my pawn, but structurally I'm better as well. I have one uninterrupted pawn chain stretching from d4 to h2, and he has two pawn islands. And that pawn on c6, or if he takes, it'll land on b5. That's a very weak point in his position. He probably can't hold that pawn in the long run. So he did this, and this allowed knight a7, hopping deeper into his position, attacking the rook, and case in point, the c-pawn is already falling. Yeah, this position's already rough for him. So best is to take, try to trade a little bit. Rook takes c1. It wants me to take with the bishop. I have the two bishops. b5 remains weak. Nice position for white, especially in view of what I had earlier. So as played, I wonder if I missed a better way of ending the game. Maybe some sort of tactical way of ending his resistance. So here, bishop takes d5 is +3. How does that work? So I assumed he would... Oh, does that just win a piece? No, I assumed he would take with a pawn. Yeah, c takes d5, rook b1. Aha. So moving the rook just one square over, and now the knight is attacked, and if the knight moves, he loses the bishop behind it. Did not see that. That's a nice resource at white's disposal. I was concentrated on playing a knight to c6 and attacking his queen and trying to separate it from the defense of the knight, but that's not working. That's elegant. I like that a lot. And it works regardless of which way he takes back, even if e takes d5. Not sure why he would do that with the hanging c-pawn, but yeah, rook b1, and he's caught in the crossfire. So instead I bagged this pawn, and time was becoming a factor roundabout here. I actually thought queen c7 might give me slightly more issues, because that looks strange to voluntarily put yourself into a discovered attack situation. Like if I move the knight, then I'll be attacking with my rook. But the point is I don't have any good discoveries. And knight e7 check does not work because if queen takes e7, saving the queen and winning a piece. So maybe queen c7 could have put up more of a fight. And even here, yeah, I just missed a tactical move, didn't I? e4. Straight up miss. Then that's the same as in the game when I eventually played e4. His knights are caught. They were trying to defend each other, and I'm just forcing one of the knights away now. And he can't go to b4. I cover that square. So he could play something like rook a3, but I assume after queen b2, yeah, queen b5, same thing. This problem is persisting. Okay, well that was a pretty easy one. I instinctively played a Luft move with my king, just creating a opening for the king to go to g2. Knight e5. And here it's harder to play because if e4 at this juncture, then rook a3 and the bishop will be under attack. Once I do play my knight to e5, though, the bishop is defended again, and then e4 is on the docket. Yeah, and he was floundering here. And I'm glad I found this solution. You know, it's incredibly tempting just to give this check because that was one of the perks of queen b5 that I mentioned, but he'll play the queen back to f8, and I'm still doing well, but swapping the queens and then finding this rook b1 move just ended his resistance practically. He had to go into a rook ending 2 pawns down. Yeah, his knights are just not doing a great job of coordinating. Sometimes knights like this can be strong, but often they're superfluous, and if you disturb one knight, then the opponent's position gets completely thrown off kilter, as happened here. e4, and he needs to move this piece or lose it. So he did find f6, which was a nice move, counterattacking. If I move my knight, I would lose my bishop, so I just initiated this trade. Here, bishop g4 was good, threatening bishop takes e6 and threatening the knight, with the point being knight takes d5 runs into the fork on the king and the knight. But I saw that I could just get ahead 2 pawns. d6 is winning. Yeah, he has trouble stopping this pawn even. If take here, I suppose. Rook f8. Rook c4, nice. I was about to take that pawn, but of course the engine finds a better move. Rook c4 with unstoppable rook c8. Interesting, the engine thinks that he might be able to draw here. I mean, plus 1.6 is not yet in completely decisive territory. This should be winning for white. No, I'm up 2 pawns. Even if I win the e-pawn, the pawn endings are often just lost for him, right? I mean, if he can't play rook takes e6 here, it would take a lot of convincing to believe that black is not losing. So, yeah, say he swaps, and then we play probably g4 to start. Looks good. Yeah, this should be winning in the same vein as the game. We can even follow the engine moves. King d5, king e3. He doesn't have a lot of pawn moves. He's going to run out of them soon, so yeah, he probably has to retreat at some stage. King e4, king f6. We can start outflanking. King d5. If ever he plays g5, we're playing f5, establishing a pass pawn. Oh, I didn't mean to go back there, but so we were looking at something like this. If h5, probably just h3 is simplest. Yeah, trade, and we're going to work our way into the position, for instance, like so, and then you can play g5, and white has taken the opposition, and we continue to flank further into black's position. We're going to win that pawn very soon. This sort of thing. So this might be a case where the engine just doesn't quite realize how bad the endgame is. That's an eval that could creep up, unless there was something earlier, but I doubt it. I mean, down 2 pawns, and if he can't eliminate that one without going into a losing ending, it's got to be just losing. Although I do recall a 15-minute game I had on ICC a while back where I was up 2 pawns and a rook ending, and I was astounded by how difficult it was to win. It was a similar ending to this, actually. I think the pawns were all on the same side of the board, and I was surprised by how difficult it was. So here I'm just trying to wait my opponent out. Yeah, and then he did this trying to set up checks, and I think e7 is the easiest. Because that forces him to take, otherwise my pawn is scoring a touchdown. And then we bring up the king. Technically he has the opposition here, but he can't hold it for very long. I could even play... Yeah, I could play g5 here, I think, if I wanted to. Even if he plays h5, trying to lock up the position, it's only going to last so long. Like f5 check is winning here. Take, king f4. Then he has to move his king away. We win that pawn. We play g6, I think. Although we have to watch out for stalemate tricks, don't we? This could actually be kind of tricky, because you got to watch out for this, is the thing. That's why I paused for a moment. That would be a great way to spoil a winning king and pawn ending, because here, king f6 is stalemate. So what I'd want to do instead is... I know the computer says mate in 22, but I want to figure out how this works. Because king e6, king g6, and he takes the opposition. So you want to flank in, but you got to be careful about how you do it. Yeah, engine likes king e5. Because then if king e5, king f7, king d6, so this continuation, here, here, here. And then no matter if his king goes here or here, you have a complementary square to go to. Yeah, that's winning. So, like if king, let's say king g7, then you go here, he goes here, you go here, king here, and we're working our way into the position. If king f7, check, king here, we stop him from getting to the h6 square, we win the h-pawn, game over. If king h7, then again, we're flanking into the position. We're going to go pick that up. So that all appears to be winning. Still kind of tricky. Got to know your pawn endings, guys. Pawn endings are great for calculation practice too, by the way. So if you want to work on your endgames and your calculation, study your pawn endgames. So the extra pawn was too much. How did I do it? King d4, just trying to circle around. He stopped me with this, but now f5. Yeah, and I think this is just over. Take, take. Because I'm getting into e5, and I'm going to win this pawn eventually. He could try this move, looking to give me a choice about which pawn to take, either g6 or h5, but it's not going to work, because I take here, and he doesn't have time to take this one, because this pawn is promoting too quick. So I played f5, he took, and then, again, trying to maintain the opposition, stopping my king from coming up, but I just start moving over. Yeah, I made a beeline for g5. Win that pawn, win the game. Just had to avoid any stalemates, right? Don't want to be playing h7 or f7. Give him the h-pawn, go promote the f-pawn. Okay, so like I said, been a while since I played a 5-minute game. I know this analysis was a little extended, but I felt there were some interesting moments. Could have played the opening better. I wish I would have played b3 right here after bishop to b7. That seems to be the proper way to go. Or a takes b5, a takes b5, rook takes a8, bishop takes a8, and then b3. Maybe the most accurate move order. As played, black should have been okay, but he just blundered with knight b6. Probably has to do something with knight takes e5. May have to endure some awkward moments with my knight coming to e4, trying to use a outpost on c5 or d6, but with e5 being weak and him being up 2 pawns on the queen side, black should be all right. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll be back again soon with another one. Talk to you guys later. Bye.